He ends up having to live with 4 girls who fall in love with him. I'm Care Anime, leave a like, and let's go. It all starts with Sari watching his favorite prediction show, where the fortune teller announces that he will have exciting encounters that day. Sari wonders what that means, but since he is already late for school, he decides to ignore the warning and runs out of the house. On the way to the station, he bumps into a 4-eyed girl named Aoi, and ends up greeting her kitten, Tilapia. Embarrassed, Aoi apologizes for making him smell like fish and leaves hurriedly, leaving behind her peach-colored cape. After Sori picks up the cape to return it later, he runs to the station, where he boards a train and is surprised to find it completely empty. Suddenly, a girl with green hair named Bai enters the carriage and sits very close to him. This makes Sari quite nervous, and while trying to act normally, the girl ends up falling asleep on his shoulder. While she sleeps, she starts to play involuntarily with his arm, but Sari desperately tries to break free before something worse happens. During the commotion, he ends up falling on her, but at that moment she wakes up and starts beating him, using his head as if it were a soccer ball. Fearing for his life, Saki-cause pound toughest of life, Sari gets off at the next station and decides to run to school. Upon reaching the staircase, best time, por chivas costo que savio. He wonders why his morning is so chaotic and then remembers the fortune teller's prediction. Even so, he decides to ignore it. However, as soon as he starts going down the stairs, a girl suddenly trips and ends up using his face as a seat. The smell of the dirty panda makes Sari move away immediately, and when the girl realizes her Jenga tower was destroyed, she runs off while calling him a weirdo. Soon after, Sari reaches halfway to school and is happy to have finally escaped all that chaos. However, at that exact moment, a cleaning robot approaches and hands him a pink strip of melon, calling him trash. Suddenly, a short girl named Amelia runs up to Saori and accuses him of hacking the robot to steal. Saori tries to explain, but the girl keeps calling him a useless thief until the robot itself drags her away for smelling like garbage. As he continues on his way, Saori sees a dog fighting with a boy, but decides to ignore the situation. After all, he had already witnessed to many strange things that morning. When he finally arrives at school, he quickly enters the classroom to avoid the teacher noticing his tardiness. However, upon reaching his seat, he notices that the 4 girls with whom he had strange encounters are somehow in the same class as him. Not wanting to be noticed, Saori quickly turns to the window. However, Professor Bai, who is the same martial arts expert girl he met on the train, immediately notices him and orders him to introduce himself to the class. Nervous, Saori turns around but pinches his own cheeks so the girls won't recognize him. Unfortunately, they identify him as the weirdo from earlier and end up slapping his face, leaving noticeable marks. During lunch, Yoshi, one of Sori's friends, asks what he did to deserve such a facial reconstruction. After Sori recounts everything that happened, Yoshi becomes extremely envious because he has always dreamed of being approached by girls. Meanwhile, in the girls' locker room, while the other girls speak ill of Sori, Owl insists that she doesn't believe he is the villain they are describing. Later, during sports activities, Sori laments that he will probably die since all the girls seem to hate him. However, Yoshi encourages him to clear up all the misunderstandings. After the physical education class, Saori finds a letter in his locker inviting him to meet under the cherry tree after school. Convinced it's just a prank, he ignores the invitation and heads to the cafeteria, where he bumps into Aoi, who shyly asks for the return of her silk clothes. When Sori puts his hand in his pocket, he accidentally pulls out the pink strap belonging to Amelia, causing Aoi to slap him for believing he collects women's underwear. Later, upon arriving at the cafeteria, Sori notices that all the snacks have already been sold. While cursing his bad luck, he sees Karen, the girl who had sat on his face, and realizes that she also ended up without food. Then he decides to offer his long-curved banana. He explains that the fruit looks squashed because it was kept in his pocket and because someone hit it earlier. Upon hearing this, Karen remembers hitting his supposed antenna and finally realizes that it was just a banana. Embarrassed, she accepts the fruit and after trying it, thanks sincerely. Later, while Sari buys a drink from the vending machine outside, he encounters Cilia, the dog boy, who is being chased again by the same dog. Onzing Sari in a Matani Susabilusi pool, sign Sol Ilia immediately runs towards her, begging for help. However, while trying to act like a hero, Sari ends up taking a hard hit. After the dogs leave, Ilya thanks for saving his life. Already exhausted, Sari just wishes that day would end soon and suggests they both forget everything that happened. As he returns to the room, Sari meets Bai, who notices the bruises on his shoulders. Concerned, she insists on treating him and takes him to the infirmary. After tending to his injuries, Bai apologizes for having attacked him on the train, as she now understands it was her fault for having fallen asleep on him. Saudi responds that it's alright, but at that moment, Amelia enters the infirmary and interrupts the conversation. Bai then leaves, as Amelia insists she can take care of herself. When Saudi asks what the problem is, Amelia, quite shy, complains that her breasts hurt due to lack of proper support. Then Saudi returns the straps he had found earlier. Quickly grabbing them, Amelia admits she was wrong to accuse him of controlling their robot and apologizes. After school, Sari gets ready to go home, but the letter slips from his bag, reminding him of the scheduled meeting. Curious, he decides to go to the cherry tree to confirm if it's all just a joke. Upon arriving there, he unexpectedly finds Aoi. When he asks if she was the one who wrote the letter, the girl confirms. Then she apologizes for the slap she gave him earlier, but Sari responds that it's alright. When returning his tape, Aoi gathers courage and timidly confesses that she is in love with him. Before Sari can respond, Al recalls the legend that says two people who become a couple under a cherry tree will share an eternal bond. Upon hearing this, Sari realizes he's in trouble and quickly warns that her clothes are showing, making the girl run off, completely red with embarrassment. Later, while Asari is heading home, lost in thoughts about Aoi's sudden declaration, he is surprised by Ilya, who starts barking while pretending to be a dog. After Sari scolds the short guy for almost giving him a heart attack, he asks what he wants. Ilya starts acting extremely nervous, as if about to explode with anxiety. Since Sari is not in the mood for his antics, he gets up to leave, but Ilya surprises him by confessing that he's in love with him. Shocked by that unexpected revelation, Sari immediately rejects the confession and advises Ilya to seek professional help. Ilya tries to convince him that he is much better than most delinquents out there, but before he can continue, Bae appears and drags Sari away. She quickly takes him to a dark alley, stating that she doesn't have time for explanations. Then she ends up biting his neck. At that moment, some men dressed in black enter the alley, and seeing the two in an apparently intimate situation, decide to leave them alone. As soon as they move away, Bai explains that a failed admirer has been trying to go out with her for quite some time, and since she always rejected him, he started sending henchmen to chase her. That's why she needed Asari's help. She then apologizes for involving him in her problems but admits she doesn't regret it because she's in love with him. When she approaches again, Sari panics, remembering that she should be his teacher. However, Bae responds that she can also teach him valuable lessons about adult life. She tries to seduce him using her attributes, but Sari had already been through too much confusion that day, so he runs away. As he desperately runs home trying to escape all that madness, Karen suddenly appears and attacks him, dressed as a runaway bride. Trying to ignore her, Sari keeps walking, but Karen chases after him and scolds him for ignoring a supermodel like her. This piques his interest. And when he asks if she really is a model, Karen shows several billboards of her featuring advertising campaigns. Even so, Sari questions why she is dressed as a bride, and Karen responds that it is her wedding day. In an attempt to get rid of the eccentric girl, Sari wishes her good luck. However, Karen grabs him by the shoulders and excitedly announces that he is precisely the groom. When Sari asks why she wants to marry him, Karen reveals that she is in love. Soon after, she drags him to a hotel, wanting to enjoy the occasion without restrictions, but Sari scolds her for acting overly desperate. Then, he convinces her to close her eyes to perform the wedding vows, and as soon as she complies, he runs away faster than lightning. Continuing his journey home, Asari begins to wonder when he became so popular with the girls. However, on the way, he encounters another eccentric girl collecting signatures. When Sari refuses, she blocks his path and demands his signature. Eventually he agrees, but realizes it is a marriage certificate and immediately shows the document away. At that moment, the girl removes the disguise, revealing herself to be Emilia. When Sari demands an explanation for why she is trying to force him to marry, Emilia admits she desperately wants to try his famous Adlati. While they argue, the same out-of-control robot reappears and starts dragging Emilia's smelly shorts. Taking advantage of the destruction, Sari quietly escapes and finally manages to get home, relieved to have survived the chaos. However, upon opening the door to his residence, he finds the 5 girls kneeling in his living room as if they were waiting for his arrival. Frightened, he immediately closes the door, convinced he entered the wrong house. However, Aoi pulls him inside. Already seated on the sofa, Saori listens to a message left by his father, informing him that all those girls are candidates to become his future brides. Ilya is also included on the list, should he consider that possibility. The father further explains that from that moment on they will start living together so that Saudi can choose his future wife. As soon as the recording ends, Sari protests, saying he doesn't want to live with any of them. However, the girls immediately surround him, arguing about who will be the first to receive his attention. Unable to bear all the confusion, he demands that they all leave his apartment. However, after they plead, claiming they have nowhere to go, he ends up agreeing to host them, as long as they don't interfere with his precious free time. Later during dinner, they all try to feed him meatballs, but Sari yells for them to stop acting so desperate. After the meal, he goes into the bathroom, hoping to finally take a bath in peace. A parteer said, but Karina appears unexpectedly wanting to share that moment. Sari immediately expels her. When he finally believes he will have peace, he discovers Amelia hiding under the bathtub spying on him. Furious, he drags her out and scolds her for her complete lack of shame. Exhausted, Sari gives up on the bath and returns to the room. After carefully checking all corners of the room, he decides to sleep. However, when looking at the ceiling, he finds Bai stuck to it like a creature from a horror movie, causing him to panic. Tired of the constant pranks, Sari gathers all the girls and asks them again to leave his apartment. However, faced with their pleas, he ends up leaving alone to cool his head. Walking slowly through the streets like a video game character without direction, he ends up at a shrine where he observes the cherry blossoms. Suddenly, Aoi appears at the location. When Sari asks how she managed to find him, she replies that she just followed her intuition. Aoi apologizes for the behavior of the other girls and promises that they will all leave. However, Sari reluctantly agrees to let them stay. After all, he is too kind to kick them out. Still, he makes it clear that they need to stop tormenting him, and Aoi agrees. Upon returning home, Sari notices that the others are already fidgety to leave, so he ends up asking them to stay, which makes everyone extremely happy. That night, Sari notices someone making suspicious movements under his blanket. Upon investigating, he finds Amelia desperately trying to use his fingerprint on the marriage certificate. Immediately, he yells for her to get out of his room. The next morning, Sari complains to Aoi about Amelia's absurd actions, but Aoi responds that all this happens because they are all in love with him. At that moment, Karen appears sleepy, looking for her face towel, and Aoi helps her a lot to find it. After Karen leaves, Bai appears asking for his tablet. Aoi finds it on the sofa and returns it. Baitsensen leaves. Soon after, Amelia appears wearing only a towel and looks for her famous melon-colored strap. Sari almost has a heart attack, but Aoi informs her where she can find it, making Amelia leave satisfied. Shortly after, Ilya Jr. joins Aoi to write names using ketchup on the rice omelette, and Sari praises the boy's impressive skill. Wanting to receive compliments too, Amelia runs to the table to write Asari's name on the omelette. However, in her desperation, the clumsy girl ends up turning everything into a huge mess. That same day at school, while the teacher was explaining about kanji, she calls Karen to solve an exercise on the board. Karen completes the activity perfectly, demonstrating great skill with languages. While the teacher praises her, Amelia is overcome with jealousy, and when it's time for the next exercise, she immediately volunteers. However, after proudly writing her answer, the teacher scolds her for her poor response, making the whole class burst into laughter. Before ending the class, the teacher announces that there will be a kanji test the following week and asks everyone to do their best. While the other students complain about the unexpected test, Amelia confidently states that it will be very easy. During the lunch break on the school rooftop, Yoshio confesses to Saori that he is really in love with Amelia. He says he finds her extremely cute and admires her persistent way of never giving up. However, Saori knows very well that her friend just wants to get closer to her. Even so, he explains that Amelia doesn't exactly have a never-give-up attitude, but rather an enormous hatred of losing. As an example, Saori tells that once Amelia lost a game of rock, paper, scissors to a television host, and spent entire days trying to figure out all possible tricks to win. When she finally claimed to have found the perfect strategy, she challenged everyone by betting her favorite pudding. However, she ended up losing again and cried like a child. After hearing this story, Yoshio complains that Saori is living every man's dream, surrounded by 4 peculiar girls, while he continues living only with his own mother. Later, while Aoi was washing the dishes, Karen holds Asari's hand and suggests that the two of them wrestle, but Sari immediately tells her to back off. Then, he asks where Amelia is and upon discovering that she is in her room, leaves Karen behind and goes to check on her. As he approaches the door, he hears Amelia celebrating excitedly, which intrigues him. As the sounds of happiness continue, Sari cannot contain his curiosity and enters the room. To his surprise, he finds the entire walls covered with writings in kanji. It is then that he realizes Amelia is studying intensely for the exam. When she complains that learning kanji is extremely frustrating, Sari offers to help her with some private lessons after school. The next day, after classes, the two meet in the library to study. Sari hands over an exercise to assess her current level, but even while proudly claiming she doesn't need tests, Amelia ends up accepting. After completing the activity, she boasts, saying it was very easy. However, Sari reprimands her for the numerous mistakes and advises her to start by reviewing the basics. That night, after dinner, everyone notices that Amelia has once again locked herself in her room. Hours later, when Sari goes to check on her, he notices the light is still on. He concludes that she is studying late. Even during classes the next day, Amelia keeps practicing kanji non-stop, which starts to worry Sari. After starting in the library, he suggests they go home since it's getting late, but Amelia refuses and insists that he go alone. Sari then asks why she is so obsessed with learning kanji. Before she responds, she advises not to overdo it just because of a grade. Hearing this, Amelia gets upset and shouts that it makes no sense to make an effort if she can't achieve results. In tears, she reveals that she wants to master the country's language, even as a foreigner, and runs off immediately afterward. That same night, the girls are worried because Amelia stayed locked in her room and didn't even show up for dinner, so Sari decides to check on her. Upon entering, he finds Amelia coddled up in a corner, crying like an abandoned kitten. He tries to talk to her. At first, Amelia asks him to leave, but when Sari turns to go, she breaks down and confesses that she hates herself for being so stubborn. Crying a lot, she says that Sari probably hates selfish girls like her. However, Sari responds that, in fact, he admires her and even feels envious of her determination. He then pats her head and encourages her to stop belittling herself. At that moment, Amelia suddenly remembers a boy from the past doing exactly the same thing. However, she quickly returns to her usual personality and demands that Sari praise her properly instead of treating her like a child. The attitude ends up amusing Sari, so he gives her a set of kanji cards to help her memorize the characters more easily. Amelia thanks him and promises to cherish them. Meanwhile, the other girls watch everything hidden behind the door, curious to find out what the two were doing. However, when Sari unexpectedly opens the door, they all fall in front of him and are completely embarrassed. As the days go by, Amelia significantly improves her kanji writing and, to demonstrate her progress, starts sticking written words all over the house. Days later, during the kanji test, Amelia tries her best and manages to score 70%. The other girls are extremely proud of her, and although Amelia tries to hide it, she feels deeply grateful to Sari for the help. During the break, Sari finds a thank you note inside his lunchbox, which makes him smile when he realizes it was written by Amelia. He also notices that his name was carefully written on his amuris. When Yoshi sees that, he becomes extremely envious and curses his own life. Several days later, Ilia remembers her father saying that she should live like a boy and vows to continue following that teaching. While recalling those words in the bathroom, Sari suddenly enters, causing her to panic. Later, the girls participate in a raffle whose main prize is a trip for 2 people. Although Aoi is extremely excited about the possibility of singing karaoke with Sari, she asks Ilia to try first. When Ilia presses the machine's button, she ends up winning the grand prize. By an unbelievable coincidence, Aoi and Bai also manage to win. Thus, the following week, Sari and the girls arrive at an onsen to enjoy the trip. However, upon seeing a frightening decorative mask at the entrance, they begin to wonder if they are really in the right place. Amelia, however, is quite excited because she read about the famous onsen and the beautiful owner responsible for the place. Shortly after, when they finally meet the woman in charge of the inn, everyone is startled to realize that her appearance is extremely peculiar. Noticing the group's silence, the woman asks why everyone is speechless. Not knowing how to react, they end up mentioning her beauty. Excited by the compliments, the eccentric owner thanks them and offers to guide them to their rooms. Immediately, Sari asks the boys to stay separate from the girls, which means he will share the room only with Ilia. However, the girls protest, insisting on staying together with him. Even so, the innkeeper completely ignores the complaints and leads everyone to their respective rooms. In the boys' room, Sari notices that Ilia is tense, so he asks if she prefers to stay with the bad boys. Caught off guard by the question, Ilia says it's not because of that she stands, but because someone snores at night like a faulty generator. Sari tells her not to stress over silly things and then playfully pats her cheeks to cheer her up, leaving Ilia embarrassed. At that moment, Karen and Amelia show up to invite them for a game of table tennis, so everyone goes to the game room. While Sari and Lilia watch from the side, the girls play table tennis, but after noticing the exaggerated movement during the match, Sari wishes they were playing with a different ball. Excited about the game, Bai decides to show her skills, so she hits the ball so hard that she ends up destroying the entire game room. The ball finally stops when it hits Sari in a delicate area, causing unimaginable pain. The impact of the wave also tears Karen's clothes, leaving her in an embarrassing situation. Later that night, after dinner, the disgusting old man offers them a tango dish. When Sari asks if the onsen has a tango, she says yes, explaining that tangos used to live around the onsen a long time ago. When Amelia asks what a tango is, Baya calls her silly before explaining that tangos are legendary creatures. Aoi also shows her one of these scary masks on the wall, saying that's exactly what a tengu looks like. Later, while Sari and Ilya are getting ready to enter the hot spring, Ilya worries that Sari will see her bust and discover that she is a girl. However, when Sari notices that she is distracted, she playfully slaps her on the backside and asks her to hurry up.